Okay, we are live.
We are. We are. Hey kids, has this ever happened to you? You're scrolling through Twitter, looking at what's on, and then suddenly. What? That's not even an argument. That's just a mean thing to say. I'll respond. The Jonah story follows the prophetic framework common to the Old Testament, wherein the prophet would design a sign or wonder before prophesying in order to show that their message was actually from God. People back then knew that someone couldn't get ingested by a fish and survive. This was a miracle that displayed that Jonah was a prophet. It belongs in the same category as Moses turning his stick into a snake before speaking to Pharaoh. There. That ought to start a lively and well-informed conversation about biblical hermeneutics. Oh look, they already responded. Let's see what intelligent and considerate thing they had to say. What? That doesn't even relate to the original post. That didn't even have anything to do with the original post, much less my response. Pick a topic and then let's discuss. Okay. Another quick response. Surely they've seen the error of their ways and are now interested in an actual conversation. That's it. You win, atheist. I give up. If you're like me, and I know I am, you'll wonder why people resort to posting pictures instead of arguments anymore. Let's explore that. We all know these pictures are called memes. What is a meme? Let me explain. Now you might ask yourself, just what is a meme? Meme was a word coined by a man named Richard Dawkins. This Dawkins guy used the meme to describe bits of information preserved as songs, idioms, parables, folk sayings, and so forth, that work their way sneakily across formats, genres, cultures, generations, and individuals. Let me tell you my favorite meme story. If you grew up in the last 40 years or so, you might have called someone a Nimrod to insult them. Like, "Hey Nimrod, you're supposed to put milk in your cereal." The word Nimrod is a meme that undersaw a fantastic journey. Let me tell you about it. The origin of the word Nimrod was a character in the Bible. The Bible says practically nothing about Nimrod, just he's name dropped and then it says he was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Now back in the old-timey days, they didn't have a lot of literature lying around the house. Most folks had a Bible and that was about it. So the word Nimrod began to be used as an expression to describe hunters 100 or 200 years ago. So if you're the kind of guy who goes into the forest and shoots Bambi's mother every once in a while, and you're any good at it, they'd call you a Nimrod. It was actually sort of a compliment to hunters. Then in 1940, a cartoon short titled A Wild Hare gave the debut appearance to a character named Bugs Bunny, being chased by a guy dressed up like a hunter. Their cartoon had a lot of gags and witty dialogue. At one point, the rabbit calls the hunter a Nimrod, using what was, by 1940, already a very old-fashioned expression in reference to hunters. The character Bugs Bunny became very popular and created a legacy that would endure for many years. So in the 1970s and 80s, there was still playing his cartoon shorts on television, and kids would get up and watch them on Saturday mornings. By 1980, it had almost been 100 years since the word Nimrod had been used as an expression for a hunter. So kids who grew up watching this rabbit insult their hunter took the word Nimrod to be just a general insult, like doofus or dweeb. Someone who grew up in the last 20 years or so probably wouldn't even recognize the word Nimrod. But kids from the 80s still remember being called a Nimrod on the playground when they didn't retrieve the kickball in time. So there you go, kids. That's how memes work. From an ancient Semitic text to a compliment to 18th century hunters, to a cartoon rabbit, to a schoolyard insult. In the early days of the internet, memes worked pretty similar to this. Kids from the 90s and 2000s might remember this.
All your base are belong to us.
This came from a Japanese import game called Zero Wing. It was a pretty average side-scroller space fighter game, but because it had been imported from Japan, the translations for the dialogue were pretty poor. And most of the dialogue was practically impossible to understand because whoever translated it knew less about English than your average blogger. But because the dialogue sounded so wacky, it worked its way into gamer language, and from there into pop culture, and then into obscurity. But this is how memes were passed around in the early days. They would take an inside joke and like this one, and work it into pictures and then pass it around for laughs. And at the time, there was some recognition of what a meme technically was. They all realized it was some kind of saying that had been taken out of context and then worked into pop culture in a million ways. Eventually, the meaning of meme got dropped, and now any funny picture passed around the internet was called a meme, whether or not it was a meme. In a way, the word meme had become itself a meme. So now we know what a meme is supposed to be. In a way, it explains why people use these instead of arguments. They stick with you. They get passed around, and they don't have much thought involved. They're the internet equivalent of calling somebody a Nimrod. But there's a much deeper reason that these have become the choice form of internet argumentation. Let me read to you a description written by psychologists Leonard W. Doob and Edward S. Robinson. Quote, "This has come to mean the employment of non-logical or effective appeals in the public dissemination and modification of ideas, attitudes, and beliefs. This is to be contrasted with those types of communication that make use of faculty, accuracy, and logically adequate explanation. It is related to persuasion, which connotes, in addition, a more intimate contact with people and a more marshalling of evidence. Looked upon it this way, these arise psychologically significant. When programs of publicity differ in the amount of reflective thought which they stimulate, such differences are clearly psychologically." Now, these psychologists are clearly talking about memes, right? Nope. They're talking about propaganda. That's right. I said propaganda. The Institute for Propaganda Analysis identified 7 different techniques used by propagandists. Let's consider these. Number 1, name calling. Calling your opponent bad names. Number 2, glittering generalities. Making yourself look good. Number 3, transfer. Associating yourself with someone cool and hoping that coolness rubs off on you. Number 4, testimonials. Show someone how cool you are, or how bad your opponent is. Number 5, plain folk. Try to show how regular, everyday people are like you. Number 6, card stacking. I'm going to have to read you the official definition here. Card stacking is when the propagandist employs all the arts of deception to win our support. He stacks the cards against the truth. He uses underemphasis and overemphasis to dodge issues and evade facts. He resorts to lies, censorship, and distortion. He omits facts. He offers false testimony, creates a smokescreen of clamor by raising a new issue when he wants an embarrassing matter forgotten. He draws a red herring across the trail to confuse and divert those in quest of facts he does not want revealed. He makes the unreal appear real and the real appear unreal. He lets half-truths masquerade as truth. And lastly, bandwagon. Showing all the cool kids are already on board with your cause, and only the Nimrods are going to be left behind. Now remember, those are all definitions of propaganda. Funny how well they describe memes. Or is it funny? Now that we've made the comparison, let's see why propaganda works. 3 things. It's easy to digest. You don't have to think it through. You just have to look at it, and it's done its job. Then, if someone tries to explain why it's wrong, they have to sit down and explain it. And that's boring. Go with a thing that was quick and easy to understand, not the long, boring argument against it. Finally, propaganda, appeal almost strictly to emotion. And our emotions are the things we use to filter the information coming at us. We feel first, then we think. And if the information doesn't pass our feeler, it will never make its way to our thinker. Ultimately, the quickest and easiest way to convince a person is to make an emotional appeal. The slow, boring route, where you have to explain something and they have to pay attention, is just not very appealing. So memes are the new propaganda. And that's why they're so popular.